The 91st Annual Academy Award nominees were announced this morning and made some history in the process. The streaming service Netflix got its first ever Best Picture nominee with Roma, a film about a domestic worker set in Mexico in the 1970s. The film got 10 nominations overall, including Best Director, Actor, and Supporting Actor. Black Panther got a Best Picture nod as well, the first ever superhero movie in that category. Rounding out the list were A Star is Born, BlacKkKlansman, Bohemian Rhapsody, The Favorite, Green Book, and Vice. But while some see this year's nominations as leaving the 4-year-old Oscars so white hashtag, when a sea of white faces made up the only actors nominated, in the rearview mirror, questions about diversity remain. With just one black actor, one black actress, out of 20 overall acting nominees, not a single woman nominated for directing or cinematography. So, is progress really being made? Joining me to discuss our arts editor, Jared Bowen, host of Open Studio. Nice to see you, Jared. Michael Jeffries, sociologist, American Studies professor at Wellesley College. Good to see you too, Michael. So, as we all know, in 2008, when Obama was elected, racism was over in America. So I assume racism is over in the film industry with these nominations, correct? We can end this conversation quickly.
Not at all. I think we do have some more to talk about, unfortunately. And you know, in 2015, when the Oscars So White campaign started, the Academy was really in a crisis. I mean, when you talk about the lack of representation of women and people of color, and the then president, Cheryl Isaacs, made a commitment that by the year 2020, they would have double the amount of representation when it came to racial diversity as they did in 2015.
In their own ranks.
Within the Academy.
Well, they've made great progress.
They absolutely have. So now, in 2015, it was 8% people of color, and the most recent statistics we have as of June 2018, they were up to about 16%. But that doesn't reflect what the demographic numbers in the country actually look like. So has there been some progress when it comes to the raw numbers in the Academy? Yes, but there's still such a long way to go.
Where are you on this?
I think it's the same. I think if you look at, certainly it's a predominantly sea of white faces that you see here nominated today. However, if you do look at the stories that are being told and the wide swath of films that were nominated this morning, you do see more representation of people of color, of the stories of Americans and people around the world. I don't think you would have seen that 4 years ago.
Can I stay, though, for 1 second on the Academy? I can't believe I'm using terms like that, the Academy. But, you know, I read this year, 49% of the new members that have been invited are women, 30% people of color. You know, even though the overall numbers are still low, we celebrate numbers like that in Congress when all of a sudden we have a record number of women. So they appear to be making a sincere effort, even if Michael's right and there's a huge path in terms of their own ranks, correct? And that's the way you diversify the industry, is from within, no?
Well, it doesn't change immediately either. If you think about films, a lot of films, you know, Green Book, I think, took 6 or 7 years to make. So this was in the works a long time ago. There needs to be a major culture shift in Hollywood where you have people of color who are working in front of the camera and behind the scenes and who are in the executive level behind the scenes.
And that's another important piece of this story in 2015. It wasn't just about the numbers in the Academy. It was about who are the heads of the studios. And I think there was an article in the LA Times that said that studio heads were like 94% white male or something like that. And that's the other side of the story, that when we get to the awards, that's the end of the process, right? But at the beginning of the process, what's the talent pipeline look like for executive producers, directors, screenwriters, et cetera?
I hate to be the optimist here, because I'm never the optimist about anything. But, for example, when the Academy for about a minute and a half created this pathetic category of popular film, and no one understood what it meant, at least my read was, Black Panther better win something, or there's going to be hell to pay here. I assumed it was the Black Panther award. They rescinded the category because they knew it was so ridiculous, and Black Panther is the nominee. I mean, that's not nothing, is it?
It was a nominee because it was a really terrific film.
I understand that.
That's why it's a nominee.
But there are other really terrific...
I disagree with you. I think this was all about ratings. The Oscar ratings have been plummeting over the last few years.
You mean the popular film category?
No, the broadcast ratings. And I think they realized that instead of... If you continue to have little art house films that are going to be nominated, that's not the case this year because you have Black Panther, you have Star is Born, then we need to introduce big films that people have actually invested in and have seen and might bring themselves to watch the Oscar ceremony.
You know, staying on Black Panther from this great line from Rolling Stone's analysis today of the nominees. It says, apparently no one wrote or directed the biggest movie of 2018, and they mean because Coogler, right, wasn't nominated in either category, even though his movie was, which is odd. I guess the notion is if you're Best Picture, you ordinarily get at least one of those things, if not two. What's your takeaway from that?
Yeah, I mean, well, that's not the only reason that people go to see these films, especially especially in the theater. I mean, Black Panther was so visually stunning when it came to the costumes. It got a lot of recognition for the musical score as well. So that's not the only part of the experience. But I think you're right, and you're onto something here, because there's a way to diminish, right, the quality of the story and the narrative that's being told if you say this is just a visual feast for your eyes, right? It almost denigrates the screenwriting dimension and the directorial dimensions of films like that.
You know, now I'm going to be on the optimistic side. If I may go back and forth, come down firmly in the middle on this thing. Spike Lee, to me, is one of the geniuses of my lifetime. He's never, I hope I'm right about it, he's never been nominated for Director Award. But now, yes?
Yeah, for BlacKkKlansman, yeah.
So that's a pretty big deal. I haven't seen the movie yet. I'm sure it's great. But there have been some other brilliant films he's made before. So it does seem that you're poo-pooing that too?
I know. This is the thing about the Oscars. You always have to remember, what we're talking about today will never yield what people are remembering and what people are returning to 20 years from now. And Do the Right Thing came out the same year as Driving Miss Daisy. I would argue that the film people are visiting more now and talking about more now and still holds up is Do the Right Thing. But he didn't get recognition then. So this is not necessarily a barometer. You look at people like Cary Grant who are never nominated. That's insane. He's still one of the biggest movie stars of all time.
You know, the other issue were one of the other issues, which I find rather odd, but I read a lot today that particularly some people of color are suggesting that Kevin Hart's non-hosting of the Oscars is a double standard. That essentially when other stars, white stars, have made homophobic comments or things, well, homophobic comments, they've either been excused or hasn't been elevated to that sort of level, but Kevin Hart, it was enforced. That's not how I saw it at all. I saw it that originally he wouldn't apologize for something that clearly was problematic, and as a result, the Academy decided we just can't have somebody like this. And the fact that he apologized, what, months later or a month later on Ellen's show, you know, too little, too late, no?
Right. I think both sides can be true here. Both parts can be true. It can be true that there is a double standard being applied to Kevin Hart's behavior, and it can also be true that his apology was weak and the comment should never have been made in the first place, and he doesn't deserve to host the Oscars as a result. I mean, I think we can have it both ways in this case.
I want to add one more element to this. I mean, you talked about theater, leadership of the companies themselves and the diversity of or growing diversity at least, of the Academy itself. But a critical issue, it seems to me, are the stories themselves. And the story that is probably generating the most discussion is one that a lot of people feel is not such a wonderful story, Green Book, which is also nominated. Sort of the same criticism that The Help received later down the line. What's your takeaway on that?
It's very personal. You know, it breaks down by who you are. I think it breaks down generationally, and the Academy does typically tend to be older, and it's still older white men who might, because of the period in which Green Book is set, might find might find more resonance in this story. I think if you're younger and you're seeing the way that this plays out, the white rescue, it doesn't resonate with you. I think this is fascinating as I circle around to see who is upset by it and who is really entranced by it.
I only have 15 seconds left. The critical issue is not all the behind-the-scenes things. Maybe in the real world it is, but most people don't have any idea who's behind the scenes or in the Academy. The true test will be in the stories themselves and how women and people of color are portrayed. Is that not fair?
But I hate to separate that from the power structure of the industry itself. If you want to produce a more diverse range of stories, you've got to address the power within the industry.
Fair enough. Nice to see you. Be well, Jarrett. See you around the studio. Take care of you, too.